Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. Just forgot to put myself on screen there for a moment. Um, it's what is it? Sunday, isn't it? 13th of February. We're well into the um, last month of winter now. Hopefully, the weather will start warming up now. It's a bit of a grey, dull day today, but we can't have everything. We've had some beautiful sunshine over the last few days, although people have been complaining about salt on the roads. But frankly, if you get clear, sunny days, you tend to get cold nights with them, and that's why we get salt. Um, Paul has looked in and said he sent me some images. I haven't actually seen those yet. Sorry, Paul. And Kevin's looked in. So has Sue. Good to see you all. Right. Okay. So anyway, we on with the show. We have a packed show. I'll be looking at how trading standards have tackled non-approved clothing at the London Motorcycle Show. A story from California, fairly tragic one, really. A woman has fallen from the rooftop of a car park whilst being trained to ride. There'll be a new drive to seize illegal bikes and quads in Durham. TfL are lowering speed limits on parts of their road network. And the Met Police have announced, I missed this, it was last month, 1 million speeding convictions per year in London as a target to aim for, which I think is absolutely appalling. We'll also look at Triumph's TE electric bike, which has reached the rideable prototype stage. And then finally, we'll finish off with a discussion point. I'll be coming back to CE clothing, and I'll be asking if this is actually the tipping point for the acceptance of approved bike kit in the UK. So settle yourselves down, grab yourself a brew, and stay with me for the next 30 odd minutes of topical news, sometimes controversial views, and often better biking tips. And we've also had Nigel and Clive and Claire and John all look in. So good morning to you all. Right, okay, so hopefully we'll keep you entertained as we go on today. Now, first things first, don't forget that the first, or the next, I should say, event on the webcast series of live events is actually going to be on group riding. I've just got a picture to pop up. There we go. Nice picture of some group riding. With the prospect of warmer weather just around the corner and the evening stretching out, the ride out season is getting underway again. And I will say that riding with buddies can be great fun. Some of my best riding experiences were with this group of riders from the old CompuServe forum days 25 years ago or more, unfortunately now. But ride outs, if they lack a bit of discipline, they can be hard work, and they don't tend to be enjoyable either. And occasionally a group ride does turn into a bit of a free for all. So I'll be talking about how to stay out of trouble the survival skills way, whether you're organising a ride or whether you're actually attending one. So do look in. That's Wednesday, the 2nd of March. That'll be at 8 o'clock in the evening, and you can get a ticket to the event here. Hopefully, this will be the correct link I've just sent you. But do check it out, and hopefully see you, some of you, for that particular webcast, which is in just over 2 weeks' time now. All right, okay. What else have we got to talk about this morning? Well, the organisers of the Carol Nash Motorcycle Show, the Carol Nash MCN, I should say, London Motorcycle Show, were reminding retailers of motorcycle clothing last week about their legal obligations, specifically the need for all clothing to be in conformity with the CE regulations. Now, Paul Vansbury, who's looking in this morning, he commented on his LinkedIn page just before the event that the usual suspects, understood to be purveyors of non-conforming clothing, are listed as exhibitors. So it's down to the London Borough of Newham trading standards to visit and set them off on the straight and narrow. Well, it appears that's just what happened. Paul told me yesterday that he'd spent Friday at the show working with officers from the London Borough of Newham trading standards and assisting with market surveillance and enforcement activity. So I can show you a picture there, which appears to have, yeah, there we go. So that's it up there. So here's the count according to Paul's LinkedIn feed. He said that 26 stands were spoken to. There was an intervention on 11, ranging from words of advice through to a requirement to put up a large sign, stating fashion wear only, not for motorcycling use, through taking goods off display. And even more extreme, some goods were confiscated, apparently, and one stand was actually closed. And fairly remarkably, one stand was reportedly trying to sell products which they've been already instructed to take off sale, whilst trading standards were still actually at the stand. Right, that's what's going on at the Excel show at the moment. Now, one thing that did come to light yesterday was that several reputable brands have actually managed to conceal their CE labels rather well. Some turned out to be in the protector pockets, or one was in a near invisible pouch, apparently. It seems a few stands were being told to, on the verge of being told to remove garments, and in actually fact, they were in fact perfectly legal once they'd actually found the well-concealed label. And as Paul put it, unfortunately, the legislation doesn't stipulate that the mark and other legal information is easily accessible. Now, later yesterday, I also got a further message from Paul to say that Trading Standards had sent along another person today to act, or yesterday rather, to act as a surveillance operative and to ensure that goods weren't being sneaked back on display, I assume. Now, I can imagine there'll be a few unhappy retailers after this, but basically, I think if it takes a hit in the bank balance for people to get the message, they can't just bring in uncertified kit and flog it to punters at shows like this, and that's good for all of us. Paul further commented, what we all found heartening was the warm welcome received from those exhibitors which are meeting their legal obligations. And amongst others that were at the show, he mentioned Gold Top and Moto Girl Limited, Moto Girl I've not heard of before, all of whom appreciated seeing their effort being put into creating a fairer market. Right, so I'll be coming back to that, and as I say, I'll be asking if this is actually the tipping point for the acceptance of CE clothing in the UK at the end of the show. Okay, now rather more serious note, rather tragic one actually. I don't think any CE protection would help if you fall off the roof of that car park. And this is unfortunately what happened. Now, novice riders in the UK frequently complain about the cost of learning to ride in here at home. But the benefits are that you get to learn in a safe environment for riding. That's one of the requirements that the DVSA have, is that there are no obstacles anywhere near the training area, and you get an instructor who's skilled in dealing with the kind of mistakes that new riders are likely to make. So you won't be training in a dangerous position, and you won't be trained in a dangerous way. But unfortunately, in this report from Santa Clarita in California, both the safe environment and the skilled instruction seem to have been totally lacking. And what happened here, sadly, was that a female rider learning to ride on the roof of this garage went into the surrounding wall and was actually catapulted over the handlebars and fell to the roadway below. Now, she was treated at the scene, but sadly, she died on the at the local hospital. The incident happened at around 5 p.m. on Monday, and the woman was later identified by friends as one Maribel Espitia, and she's said to have been in her 20s. The police learned that two men and two women were performing tricks on the parking deck as well, and the mall employees actually said it's a popular destination for bikers to be performing donuts. The sheriff's department is actually working with the mall to find video evidence to find out exactly what happened. But the spokesman for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department said the woman who died either lost control of the motorcycle or couldn't brake before crashing into the wall. And Sheriff Department Sergeant Dave Shoemaker said, I know friends want to teach people, but if you're that interested, take a professional course. And sadly, I couldn't actually agree more with that. Right, don't forget you are watching Elevenses from Survival Skills. If you have a comment, if you have a question, do drop me a line and I will do my damnedest to get back to you during the show if I possibly can. If I can't make it during the show, I will answer the comment stream at the end of the show. Sometimes I have to do that. Um, right, okay, so we've got a couple of comments on the previous story. Nigel says, bit surprised that trading standards found much to buy at the show. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see. Sue said, not heard of Moto Girl, famed throughout the female land. Yes, well, yeah, I'm aware of another female only biker clothing supplier. There are alternatives. Kevin says, excellent work at the bike show. And Nigel asks, was the problem fraudulent labeling or the selling of fashion clothing, though? Gold Top sells some very nice street clothing. Yes, okay. Good question. One that probably can be answered later. I don't have the answer for you right now, Nigel, but I'll try and get back to you on that one. Right, okay, on with the news. From this week, anyone seen illegally riding an off-road bike, an e-scooter, a quad or a 4x4 in East Durham or Darlington will have their bike seized straight away by police from Durham Constabulary as they crack down on nuisance riders and motorists in what they're calling Operation Endurance. Perhaps they've run out of endurance, I don't know. Anyway, it's an operation which is being coordinated with the Police and Crime Commissioner, who's Joy Allen, and Durham County Council and Darlington Borough Council. So Section 59 warning signs are being erected across the area to notify potential offenders of new powers and to raise awareness of the scheme. And residents are being encouraged to report incidents as they happen to help identify those responsible. So the areas affected are Peterlee, Shotton Colliery, Wingate, and Darlington itself. Slightly more alarming, though, is the Forces Casualty Reduction Coordinator, one Nicola Bowman, who was quoted as actually asking for information about where these vehicles are stored. Whilst catching somebody in the act is one thing, actually trying to find the vehicles themselves is, I think, slightly dangerous ground. There are legally stored off-road vehicles which are used off-road in the manner in which it's intended. And it seems to me that that's a bit of a dangerous move in the direction of vigilante-style policing, but that's my opinion, of course. Right, okay, don't forget, if you want to catch this show live, it goes out Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, almost always live. Very occasionally it goes out on a recorded show, but we are live today, of course. The spread of 20-mile-per-hour speed limits is continuing away from the residential streets where they originally were first seen. And now Transport for London has announced lower speed limits are to be introduced across a range of their what I would call corridor routes into and across London. And these roads include the A13 Commercial Road, which leads in from East London, the A23 London Road, which heads out through Croydon towards Surrey, and the A10 Great Cambridge Road in Enfield will also have its speed limit dropped to 30 miles per hour. Now, this is all part of the Mayor of London's Vision Zero target of eliminating all serious injury and deaths from London's road by 2041. As sort of a move towards that goal, TfL have committed to reducing speed limits to 20 on all 140 miles of the TfL road network by 2024. Now, to be honest, I don't have a great deal of problem with lower speed limits in urban areas. Generally speaking, they don't often actually materially affect your travel time. But what they do is they tend to cut out the more aggressive and acceleration between the inevitable stops. Lily Matson, who's TfL's Chief Health, Safety and Environment Officer, said that the new limits will not only save lives, that's based on the idea that if you hit somebody at 20, they're far more likely to survive than if you hit them at 30, but it would also encourage Londoners in these communities to travel in more sustainable and active ways. Now, I'm really not sure about that, I have to say. Many of the journeys I make by car or motorcycle within London are well beyond walking distance. Cycling is not an option. My partner has 2 knee replacements, and public transport rarely runs in the right direction, at least not without several changes of route and a considerable expenditure of time. Unfortunately, driving is here to stay. It's part of the effects of urban sprawl, and until you actually relocate people's workplaces and shopping places to local businesses again, people are going to have to travel. So I do find this a sort of um, imposition of lower limits on corridor routes something to be questioned. Um, Along the same lines, though, there's some even more alarming news from the Metropolitan Police, which I actually missed last month. But they've announced that they'll be increasing their efforts to catch speeding drivers. Now, there's one way they're going to do this is to give their 500 plus police community support officers new powers, and they will also be upping the number of patrols who will be targeting speeding. And the Met's top roads policing officer, Chief Superintendent Simon Ovens, he told a meeting of the London Assembly's Transport Committee back in January that TfL has a clear position to get a target of 1 million prosecutions a year for speeding. Sorry, that shouldn't be TfL's position. That's the Met Police's position. Um, the and I find that frankly astonishing, and I'm a bit surprised that the TfL haven't actually spoken out about this rather more. Now, Will Norman, who's the Walking and Cycling Commissioner, he actually said that TfL's goal is not to get however many prosecutions. The goal is not to enforce at all, and that it wants people to drive at 20 miles an hour and be safe and protect people. But the implication really here is that the Met are actually setting an active goal for the number of speeding offences they want to nab. And I think that is actually a terrifying piece of policing. Maybe recent events within the Met will cause a bit of a rethink on that. I can only hope so. Right, okay, we've got several comments here. I'll come back to Paul's in a moment. Right, okay, so yes, right, okay, so yes, all right, let's just move on to the next story, and I'll try to come back to Paul's comments while I get to the final story of the day. So, all right, let's have a quick look at a new motorcycle. Now, as with most of the new bikes that I've been showing over the last few months, with the I think near demise of the petrol engine, virtually all of the bikes that I'm showing are actually electric, and this is the latest picture of the Triumph's TE1 electric motorcycle project. Now, this still looks suspiciously like a render rather than a real bike to me, but Triumph are actually saying they've now completed work on their prototype demonstrator at the end of what they call phase 3. So they can now move on to what they're calling phase 4 of the program, which is where they actually use the bike for live testing. And now this will take place partly on a rolling road for what they call core functional assessment, and that will be such things as throttle calibration, powertrain performance mapping, and software function validation. And then they'll move on to track testing with the bike, and that'll obviously look at the sort of dynamics of the machine. They'll be investigating its handling, its braking, and regeneration strategy as well, how well that works out on the track, and sort of the rider aids like traction control and what they call front wheel lift control. So the testing program has been designed to provide direction to have the final product set up and calibrated properly. Once the live testing phase is completed, the prototype demonstrator will be updated with its final body panels and the paint scheme, and then it will be actively demonstrated, it says, to the media. Right now, the all-new battery pack has a peak power of 170 kilowatt and a continuous power of 90 kilowatt and a capacity of 15 kilowatt hours for the battery. This enables the motorcycle to deliver 130 watts of kilowatts of peak power and 80 kilowatts of continuous power. So you'll see that there's actually a bit of built-in safety there. The motor draws less power than the battery pack can actually put out. So there's an element of safety. I presume that's designed to stop it overheating. Anyway, Nick Bloor, the Triumph's CEO, said it's been a truly exciting to see the progress made during phase 3 of Project Triumph TE1, with the final prototype motorcycle now going into real-life testing. Everyone involved at Triumph are proud to have been part of this innovative British collaboration. Personally, I'm thrilled with the results we've already achieved with our partners and the exciting preview of the potential electric future to come. So they will be sharing the work as they do it with, they say, Triumph fans across the world. Right, okay. Yeah, a couple of comments on the speed limits. Jeff says that TfL don't seem to want to educate vulnerable road users to be more safe. Well, that's always a contentious one. I'm not going to get drawn into that debate today. I've already kind of talked about that quite a lot on my Facebook page. Kevin says confusion by poorly signed and frequently changing speed limits leave folk unknowingly speeding. I can't disagree with that either. It's one of the reasons that even though when I know where I'm going, I've got the GPS on in the car, because it bongs if I am exceeding the speed limit, because I have found several roads where there's no warning that the speed limit's been changed, but it has been since the last time I ran down it. And Mike says, I'm missing the point that the end game is to stop people traveling. Well, I don't know. That's another one of these debatable arguments. I think we can argue the toss about that for a long time. I think, personal mobility is here to stay. You can't have anything else with a city the size of London. You simply can't get to big chunks of it on public transport in sensible times. I don't know how we're going to approach this in the future, but yes, there certainly are some things that can be changed. Right, okay, so let's come back to the opening story before I run out of time for the day. And I make no apologies for returning to the topic of CE clothing and the story that trading standards officers arrived to police the Carolmash MCN motorcycle show as it returned to Excel this weekend. Now, I had a quick look at the retail zone information, which is available on the mcnmotorcycleshow.com website, and it showed that there were 107 stands booked in. Now, it's not clear how many of those were selling clothing, but clearly a lot do, since the advert on that website actually says, quote, "From lids and leathers to gadgets and tech, it's the best show around to buy a bike and kit yourself out head to toe all in one day." Just to remind you, and if you missed the news item, and it's not a long one, replay it and watch it. The report said that 26 stands were spoken to. An intervention was made at 11, ranging from words of advice through a requirement to put up a sign stating fashion wear only, not for motorcycling use. Goods taken off display, confiscation of some goods, and one stand was closed. So the question I really want to sort of address is, how have we arrived in this situation where non-approved riding kit is still on sale? Well, quite simply, it's been down to the industry, and to be fair, us riders who buy the kit who've actually ignored the CE standard. But the truly astonishing thing is that there have been regulations designed to protect the rider from substandard kit for almost 30 years. So the point that Paul and others like John Milbank and myself as well have made repeatedly is that the new CE regulations were no kind of surprise. There was plenty of warning that they were being introduced, and manufacturers, distributors, and retailers were actually given a grace period to sell on non approved stock after these new regulations were introduced. But let's have a little bit of history. Now, as long ago as 1994, regulations began to require that any garment described as personal protective equipment had to be shown to have met a CE standard. Now, employers have an obligation to provide staff with PPE, and that's why you would find police riders kitted out with CE approved BKS and hideout leathers. Um, but what about ordinary riders? Now, in the early 2000s, I found an article I'd written about an interview conducted with Paul Varnsbury, who's on here today, with Superbike magazine. So we're looking at 20 odd years ago. And at the time, Paul said, to quote, a product is either Conformité Européenne, CE marked, or caveat emptor, buyer beware. Now, I rather like that, but it's not as if riders didn't know this. I actually owned a pair of CE approved gloves produced by a company called RS Performance. I've still got them somewhere. I was looking for them this morning. I can't find them. I think they're in a box in the shed. Um, and I was actually talking about CE approved riding kit in CBT lectures I was giving from 1996 onwards. I still have a copy of the notes which I made in 1997. I still have them. They live in a little filofax, and they mention checking clothing for a CE label. So that's 1997 when I was teaching CBTs. So that's 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago. So what happened? Well, arguably, the manufacturers put the skids under the whole system. One of the things that they suggested was that testing would be far too expensive and difficult, and that it would put the price of CE approved kit through the roof, um, which it wasn't entirely true. The RS Performance gloves were no more expensive than any of the sort of middling products from some of the better known manufacturers. And they suggested that the garments would be uncomfortable to wear too, which was a claim actually repeated by a British manufacturer who was trying to avoid the latest round of CE regulations just a couple of years ago. So the industry largely sidestepped these regulations by selling kit as being non-protective. Now, how did they do this? Well, one way was in the way that the garment was promoted. Rather than photographing riders actually on the bike, what they started doing was photographing models wearing the kit, standing suggestively near the bike, but in non-riding poses. They'd be standing at the beach in full motorcycle weathers, sipping a soft drink or something whilst looking at the lovely sand and the sun. Um, Sometimes the manufacturers actually admitted that the garment wasn't to be considered personal protective clothing within the meaning of the directive. Now, again, somewhere I've actually got a Bellstar leather jacket, which I bought for instructing in 1995, which actually has a label sewn into the lining to that effect. I did have a look for it this morning, but I can't find it. I suspect that's in the shed too. But what the manufacturers did do was fit body armor tested to CE standards, and that enabled them to hang big labels on the outside of the garment. So superficially, if you didn't know what you were looking at, it did look like the garment was CE approved. And of course, retailers were happy to stock them and sell them to the likes of you and me as suitable bike clothing. So you can make of that as what you will. Now, the game changed on April 21st, 2018, where with new legislation coming in that would make it illegal to sell non-approved bike kit. Now, the manufacturers can still make whatever they want, but what they can't do is sell it to motorcyclists as protective kit. It simply cannot be used for motorcycle use if it's not approved. So what's so good about CE approval? Well, basically it acts as a dependable mechanism by which consumers are able to distinguish between competing products in the marketplace. You'll know at the moment that what we have for bike clothing, trousers, and jackets is a double A, triple A standard. So what you can see instantly is you can get a measure of how good the garment actually performs in real world crash tests. And as we've said before, I would consider the A standard to be a low speed urban riding suitable for those 20 limits in London kind of riding. But if you're going to do any serious riding or touring, I would say the AAA standard is the one to go for. But in other words, if it's past the standards, then what we're getting is reliable kit that's been tested for the kind of damage that occurs when we fall off a motorcycle and come into contact with the outside world. Now, the testing procedures developed to gain the CE approval are carried out in laboratories. And a key point again is that these tests are independent, i.e., they are not carried out by the manufacturer. The manufacturer sends the garment off to a tester where it goes through a standardized and repeatable test. And that is how last week's story, a garment which was incorrectly marked, was picked up when it was tested elsewhere. Now, there are numerous standards regulating the protective qualities of motorcycle products, which I won't try and confuse you with, but the key point is that the garment should be showing the standard both on a tag stitched into the garment and an informational booklet attached to the garment. And it just so happens that here I have a set of gloves, and you can see they have the dangly tag on them. If I turn it the right way around, you get the other label out of the way and get it in front of the camera, you should be able to see that it says CE on the label. And the booklet, in fact, tells you who does the testing. Again, if I can get that up into the camera lens, you should be able to see that it says EC type examination issued by, and it gives you ITS testing, and you can see that they are in Leicester. So that's on the outside. What about on the inside of the glove? Well, there is the tag on the inside, which again, if I can get the little other label out of the way, so it's a little bit fiddly, but there we are. It tells you that it's CE approved, and there is a code at the bottom which you can just about see with all the other labels in the way just over there. You can see there is a code, and if you put the code in to Google, you can very quickly determine that that is actually the correct code for a glove. So what do I feel about the raid, as it were, on the bike show? Well, I do trust it won't be a one-off. I do hope that the various trading standards who will be the sort of shows that we have around the country will be sitting in their zones. I do hope that they will work to ensure that traders continue to abide by the rules, and that the traders, in fact, start leaning on their suppliers to conform to regulations. But ultimately, I honestly think that what will drive non-approved products off the shelf will be you and me ceasing to buy them. The XL London website promoting the shows says you can get yourself kitted out for the season, and all the biggest clothing, kit, and accessory brands will be at the show, from technologically advanced race leathers to branded casual clothing. Bag a bargain from London's biggest motorcycle shop. It's for 1 weekend only. Bag a bargain. Well, there is the key point, really, isn't it? We all want a bargain. I've certainly headed along to these shows in the past hoping to find one, but none of us really want to discover that it was rather less of a bargain than we were expecting. So, to conclude today, one final question which only occurred to me as I was actually putting the final points together. What's the legal responsibility of the organisers to ensure the traders comply with the law? Is sending out the reminder that we saw last week sufficient to show they have done their bit, or does it go rather deeper? I don't know the answer to that. Now, we've got some comments here. Okay, they're a little bit complicated. Nigel says, well done to trading standards. He's particular in his rider clothing. Yeah, okay. Nick says, given that it's not compulsory to wear kit, helmet accepted, isn't this a storm in a teacup? No, I don't think it is at all, Nick. For the very reasons that I've made out. If you don't want to wear clothing, that's entirely up to you. Don't forget, gloves are now a requirement in France. And if I remember correctly, I also ran a story which said that approved motorcycle clothing, top to bottom, is actually a requirement in Cyprus. So there are rules about this, but basically, if somebody makes the kit, it should meet the standards. That's the question that we're trying to answer here. And Paul says, surely riders, especially newcomers who don't have the advantage of experience, are entitled to clear information on the status of their product. I can't disagree with that at all. It was why I was mentioning it all those years ago on CBT. I don't know if instructors still do. That would be an interesting point to discover. Nigel again says, more worried about fraudulent and misleading labelling, but the system should be made easy to follow, especially for newbies. Again, I won't argue with that, and that's something that many people have said that the AAA, AAA standard allows. Sue says that they hope trading standards visit BSB when it starts up again. Yes, because they always have a market there, don't they? And Paul's last statement here says Bauer Media's Get Into Biking publication. It includes an explanatory section. Excellent. So there, I'm trying to get something similar published as a web resource. Great idea, Paul. Excellent idea. All right. Okay. I think that's enough for today. We've done our 30 minutes plus. I hope you found it a very interesting show again today. And I really do welcome your input. But thank you very much indeed, Paul, for dropping your points as well. I noticed there are a couple of longer ones, and I will actually try and get back to those. What I might do is actually do again a roundup of this in another Elevenses. All right, okay, so that's the pretty much it for today. I'll just wind down Elevenses with a reminder that the winter gift voucher scheme is still up and running. The idea of these gift vouchers is you can purchase them till the end of February. You can find them in my coffee shop. When you buy the gift voucher, the good news is that when you redeem it against a course, you actually get back rather more than you paid for it. So basically, it's a way of saving money. I've given you the date for the group riding webcast, so you've already got that. Do look over to the coffee page there. That'll give you full details on the gift vouchers. And that's pretty much it for the show today. Thank you all for looking in, and I hope very much to see you on the next show, which will be on Wednesday. If you're actually riding out there today, take it easy. The weather's not looking so great for the rest of the week. There's some windy days coming up, so pick and choose your riding time, and that way you'll stay shiny side up.